And we
Get nothing.
roll. Episode 6. Here we go.
Episode 6.
Is
Let's
it
get
time?
going.
Is it time for a theme tune?
I think you're right.
I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, like Community.
All
They said
right.
like Troy and Abed in the morning. We could come up with something. We could have a vibe.
You're going to sing something. Sing it. Let's do it again. Do something.
Well, in Community, they had.
You do it. Okay, you do a song now, and then I'll do one. So you go first.
I've fallen for that before, Spencer, and I'm not going to fall for it again.
The Spen and Beck Show.
I think like making Spen and Becks.
Making. How embarrassing, like dad level embarrassing, could we make this?
Probably quite high, quite easily.
Just need me to start moonwalking back here. Like, yeah, I can do that. By the way,
That's a skill of a
did you
certain
know that?
era, though. Don't downplay that. At a certain point, there'll be not a lot of people who can do that. Mainly because of their hips, but it will get to that point.
So this is I learned how to moonwalk when not teaching kids when I was a teacher. So I
Okay.
should have been teaching, and they taught me how to moonwalk. That's pretty much what my final year or two of teaching was all about, perfecting the moonwalk. I got a lot out of it. I'm happy with where I got to, and
Fair exchange. I think that's important.
fair exchange. But what are we gonna? Okay, theme tune. It's on the to-do list.
Yep.
We've got it captured. That probably is a nice segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is like, as a founder, how do we get our shit together, basically,
Yep.
and not go absolutely raving mad and turn ourselves up in knots. And we were going to talk about our personal operating system.
Yes, 100%. I'm fresh off the back of a psychology lecture, so I'm coming at you with a psychology laser. Like, that's what's happening this morning. Boom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm a bit
yes.
worried now, by the way. Should I be,
would be.
fearful of you analysing?
Oh, there's never any analysing. I'm not that high. I just know the theories.
That's enough.
Randomly
That's
apply
enough.
them. Yeah, no, I think it's really important. Everyone feels overwhelmed. When I speak in terms of my coaching practice, everyone faces it. It's a universal thing. We have 3 inbuilt kind of like characteristics as humans: anxiety, depression, and anger. They're kind of like thrown from caveman times. There's a reason for them, and we all get it. And the more we know about ourselves, the better we can kind of tackle it. And I know that, especially in founders and startups, that initial like, yeah, let's go, and then after a while you're like, oh man, what am I in for, what am I doing, etc. So the more we can kind of like make people aware of them, equip them, etc., I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's quite like, I hear those things, those words, and straight away I already feel quite negative.
Yeah.
Like, these are the emotions that are inbuilt in us, but they're really negative emotions, and I know they serve a purpose, but I can't help but think, I'm worried here, and I'm going to be honest. We need to make sure we keep the energy up here. We don't want to fall into a trap of looking at all of this and going, oh shit, the world's really bad. Like, how can we bring this positive spin? What are we going to talk about with regards to a positive spin for this?
You've caught me off guard there. I was just going to come with my own personal energy. No, I think that it's a case of having... Well, we're going to give you a personal operating system. We're going to give you, or a way of creating that. So actually, a lot about yourself. You know how you might react, what you might do when these things do raise their ugly little heads, self-limiting beliefs, inner critic, all that kind of horrible stuff, and what to do to kind of quash them. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? The goal is to not be crippled by them. Crippled might be a bit of an extreme word, but how do you make your way through them? I mean, we were talking off camera. I'm a pretty upbeat person. Yesterday, I was like, "Oh no," and my go-to was the wrong go-to. Say again.
And what was your reaction in the evening?
Red wine and pizza. No children, no kids. It is not the way to go. Yeah, I ended up. I was like, right, okay, that didn't work for me. What are all the things I know? I was like, yes. what I should have done. And this thing, like you have, going back to the whole how we're designed, you have the hippocampus, which has all your memories in it. You have the hypothalamus, which is your biological reactions, and it tries to keep homeostasis. And it relies on the memories from the hippocampus as to what you do, these kind of like inbuilt patterns, how we act. And your brain doesn't know what's good and what's not, what's real and what's not. So it goes, right, okay, there's a threat. Back in the day, it might have been a polar bear or a woolly mammoth. Or it might be a case of like, oh, I feel like I've got too much on. I feel like there's this demand of me, or I feel like I've got to do X and I don't know whether I'm capable. And stress tends to come from when you haven't got the resources at hand to do the thing that you need to do. So hippocampus says to hypothalamus, well, last time we did this. And the other part of the brain goes, well, we survived. We're still alive. Brilliant. Let's do that again. So it was like, yeah, drinking red wine and eating pizza. That worked really well for us last time. Let's do that again. Rather than new neural pathways, which need developing with new habits, such as, meditation and having a bath or things that are energizing, etc. And there's loads of different things that we'll talk about later. My brain went straight for the jugular of red wine, and that didn't work for me.
Very easily done.
Exactly.
Very
Yes.
easily
The more we understand these triggers, the more we can look to address them, look at new behaviours, what works well for us, kind of model out better behaviours and get us towards our goals a bit smoother, with a little bit less stress involved, I think.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I've had this. I've had real moments of stress, and sometimes it gets to the point where you get that physical sign of stress as well. And even before knowing that you're in that, some kind of weird physical thing happens. And I used to have a thing where I kind of got these little remnants. I've always had a beard since I was 18.
Okay.
In fact, I've shaved it off once, and there's an interesting story there, but I will definitely save it for another time. So remind me at some point, tell the story of the time you shaved your beard.
Did it involve the threat of divorce? Because that's what I'm like with my other half. I'm like, I will leave you if you get rid of that beard.
No, it was like the opposite of that, but that's what I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I used to get this like bald patch in my beard. And then in my hair, I got a bald patch when I was really going for it and going through a lot of stress. And that's actually when I was getting divorced. I had this big bald patch and I had this, and then the hair started to grow through, but it was growing through white, completely white. And that was, I think, a reaction to stress. And I didn't really know that I was stressed at the time. And I think this is one of the things I wanted to talk about and try and see whether you've got any like knowledge around this or kind of theory maybe about this. But like, it's sometimes really difficult to identify in the moment that you're highly stressed unless you really do understand yourself and your natural behaviors and the way that you kind of think. It's really hard to know that you're kind of at a high level of stress. I think some other things maybe are easier to notice perhaps. But I don't know, have you had any thoughts or experiences around that? It takes me a while to realise that I'm in a stressful situation, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a common thing or not.
It totally is. And I think the more self-reflection you do, the better you get at identifying. For me, number one tell is my sense of humour goes right out the window. I have literally fuck all sense of humour. Like, I'm just like, what do you want? What are we doing? And I get really controlling of like...
I can't see that, by the way. I've never... Yeah.
Oh, well, you were like normally like Simon just like backs out of a room. He's like, right, not getting involved in that one. And it's, I know that I become very controlling of process and like things have to happen in a certain way in a certain time. So like bedtimes with my daughter are very like, right, we're on a schedule. Blah, 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 blah. There's no play. It's not a relaxed thing. And she's just like, what the hell's happening? There's certain tells, but it took me a long time. I worked in stressful places. I worked in, high turnover agencies where it was like bam, 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 bam. They often say that stress comes from, low control, high responsibility. So especially in situations where you feel like you've got to deliver a thing, but you haven't got any levers to pull or any resources, which was exactly where I was. I wasn't a developer, but I managed relationships, and they were incredibly important to me. And I wanted, I had real values aligned to fairness and quality, and I was a people pleaser, and I wanted everyone to be happy. Yet I couldn't actually sit there and code, so it created a real stress point for me. But at the time, I was just like, more pizza and red wine, maybe throw some vodka in on a Friday night. Let's go bananas. Yeah, that didn't work. Neither did throwing some cigarettes in, the early, like the late 2000s. It just isn't a good thing. And a lot of people, they do that. Well, I'm going to have a bottle of wine later because it de-stresses me. Well, it actually doesn't. Actually, the physical reaction you have to that alcohol, cigarettes, whatever, it actually creates a more stressed state. And then your tolerance the next day is lower for even more stress. There's a whole thing. I'm having some really great conversations with a hypnotherapist actually recently, and she was talking about this stress bucket, and it was just really beautifully explained in really simple terms that even I got. And essentially, you collect the stress through the day, and then REM sleep is what clears the bucket out. But your brain can only do. Your sleep can only be 20% REM based. So if you're trying to process too much, actually your brain goes, no, too much, and you wake up, which is when these ruminating thoughts kick in, and why at 3 a.m. you're like, overwhelmed. And that anxiety piece, going back to the previous bit we were talking about, it was designed to be like, oh, there's a polar bear outside. I'm scared of that. I'll go and check there's not a polar bear there. Oh, what about that polar bear? I'll go and check it's not there still. So you kind of wired to not forget about the thing that you're worried about. So it's not like, hey, you just like stumble out the cave and get eaten by the polar bear. You're on high alert. And the problem is you continue to be on high alert. Everything feels unsafe. So if you are in that stress thing and you've not done the appropriate activities to kind of process it, you're just on all the time. And it's that fight, flight, freeze thing. It's flight is run away. If you can't beat the thing, you run away from it. If you can beat it, you fight it. And freeze is when you've given up all hope and you lay down and play dead. And that's often you might be in a meeting, someone asks you something, you're like, I don't know, like brain's gone. And then you're in like primitive brain state rather than intellectual. And there's definitely things you can do to kind of help you with that. Things like gratitude, thinking of 3 things a day that have gone well. And then the more you do that, your brain will be like, oh, okay, actually, I need to add that to my list today. That went really well. And it kind of like lowers the cortisol, makes you realize that actually things are safe. You are capable. There's a few things, but it's knowing it. And that's the thing, like, this is why I want to talk to us about this today, because we track our health stats. We go to the gym. We build analytics into our tooling, all these things where we have data points to optimize and understand, but we don't necessarily do it for ourselves and our brain. So, really basic things like journaling, like what's gone well, what are thoughts that are coming up, self-limiting beliefs, what's the little voice inside your head saying? Because it'll come from somewhere. There'll be a belief somewhere. Something's happened, and it might be as simple as it was a meeting where this thing happened and you learned that thing wasn't safe. Or you grew up with someone in the family saying, oh, well, you shouldn't, why would you want to go and do something creative? You're not like that. We spoke last week about, me not being strategic and you not being creative. 2 things that are totally untrue. But they got locked in there, and it's like, well, that's not a safe place to play anymore. So we're going to take that and play with it every so often. And the more you understand that and can kind of tackle it, or at least quash it and quieten it, it makes life a lot easier. Because to be good and play at the level you want to play at and be creative, innovative, all those things, and enjoy yourself in your work, you need to be in the intellectual part of your brain, because that means you can turn up and do the things that you want to do rather than be in that perfectionist procrastination circle, all those things where you're like, I could do this. Classic example, I started working for myself. I worked in this industry for, 10, 15 years. Day one, I was like, oh, shit. And I was like, do you know what? Actually, I used to get charged out at like $2,000 plus a day to go and have my opinion sought. Why am I now so scared about it? And that's the thing, it's that change of state, especially in startup when it's like okay, right, my mortgage is reliant on me turning up and doing a good job today, rather than there being that, wages coming each month, you might start to panic. And understanding these things will definitely help you. It's very long-winded.
Wow. I'm learning so much, and it's making me think of all kinds of things. And I wanted to just draw some parallels, maybe, or some deeper things
Yeah.
from what you've just talked about. So, firstly, what you just described was like a big aha moment for me. One of the things, particularly, was when we, I can't remember, what did you just say? You said something where your, control is low, but your responsibility is high.
Yes.
I've been in that situation. I can totally see moments in my life where I've been in that situation exactly. And it was so uncomfortable, and it absolutely led to moments of high stress moments.
Yeah.
And were probably those moments where, I was getting the physical reactions and everything else. So
Yeah.
just knowing that actually is just a really insightful piece of the puzzle,
Fab.
because you can straight away start to think, well, how do I get more control, or how do I reduce the responsibility if I haven't got the control? How do I leverage the things that I can do?
Yeah.
And what's in your, kind of stoic principle, what's in your circle of control rather than external to your circle of control, and just focus on those things that you can directly have an impact on. And that's kind of your safe zone. So totally can resonate with that from my, past life as well, and the experiences that I've had. Also thinking about like this, the fight, flight and freeze. And it kind of reminds me of, again, very amateur with this, but things like the Daniel Kahneman book of Thinking Fast and Slow, these kind of different modes of thinking. And I wonder, and I know that there's something there around, those immediate reactions are really helpful in certain situations, but actually sometimes you need to take the reflective brain, part of the brain. You need to be thinking about the situation far more in order to, gather, compose, think about things and how things are affecting you. But also, and I guess it's kind of similar, but the Stephen Peters book, The Chimp Paradox.
Yeah.
This idea of there's a chimp within us all.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this chimp brain, we've got a human brain, and I can't think of the third that
Computer.
he started to. The computer brain, thank you. And and how we kind of need to feed the chimp. We need to kind of keep the chimp on side, but we need to acknowledge the chimp. And I think that's kind of understanding yourself, that piece about understanding yourself. Again, I'm very high level from those kind of books. Oh, a third thing, final thing, I assure you on this one is, it also reminds me of some learning theory that I studied way back when I was a teacher. So a lot of people really, with learning and kind of pedagogy, are familiar with a thing called Bloom's taxonomy. And it's a visual thing of a triangle of understanding, knowledge, or knowledge and understanding. And then as you go higher up, it's like synthesis and evaluation, and these different kind of levels of learning, although it's not strictly about levels. But there's another domain. So that's called the knowledge domain. There's two other domains. One's the psychomotor domain, and one's called the affective domain.
Okay.
And the affective domain is really, really interesting, and it's about psychology. It's about how can you affect people's beliefs, values, and emotion systems, therefore change the way that people behave, react, and think to things. And it's a bit of a dodgy one, bit of a careful balance that you've got to strike, because if you could really change people's beliefs, then you could brainwash. And actually, some of the tools and mechanisms are used for brainwashing in cults and whatever else. Yeah. But the theory being, and the way that I visualize this in a really simple way, is that our beliefs and values are like, if you put a load of washing up liquid into a bowl and put a load of you get all these bubbles, like the big bubble, what do you call them? Suds?
Suds?
Maybe
Yeah,
the wrong
yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of an era again, but yes.
All of these bubbles are like your beliefs and your values that are built up over time.
Yeah.
And in order to change those fundamental beliefs that you have right at the core, right at the center, you kind of have to pop all those external bubbles. But of course, if you don't pop them, then more bubbles come and kind of protect those deeper ones. Yep. And so the more time goes on without challenging beliefs or without kind of critically thinking about yourself and reflecting on yourself, the more they are firmly held. And the more that you, so in our world here, the kind of things we're talking about, the triggers that your response triggers to acting and behaving in a certain actions from a trigger.
Yep.
Will kind of deepen those beliefs, but also in the wider world of that kind of, and this is definitely one for another topic, but I've got to say it now that I've started another show, is how you can quickly see how like loosely held beliefs can become so strong from constantly being reinforced with those beliefs through things like social media. And of course I'm talking about how the division of society that's being possibly created by other means as well as social media, but all these things are just like another layer of bubbles in my head. That's how I visualize it, to kind of reinforce those deeper held beliefs. So
it's confirmation bias. I mean, there's a few things in it. It's like
that's probably a much easier way of describing it than I've just gone
the
through.
whole thing of, is it Andrew Tate, the name of that horrific dude? The fact that he's getting in kids' brains so early, and then the social media algorithms are just reinforcing, and you're like, well, I've got nothing else to go with, so that's the way, isn't it? And you have these reinforced neural pathways, and these become stronger and deeper in the same way as how I walk through a wood. If I keep taking the same path, the path gets worn, it gets deeper. You have got neuroplasticity, which means you can create new pathways, but you have to keep doing it. You have to remember to do it. You have to remember to do the change. And it's, there's a lot, got the psychology of habit forming and changing as well. And these kind of like pattern interrupts and things that you can do, which is, I could take you on a whole, on a whole rabbit hole about that. But it's the more they're your go-to and the more you do them, it's more ingrained it becomes, unfortunately. And it's just learning about what works for you, what could work for you. And, and it's not, I think that, journaling and thinking about where you want to be and how you want to be is really important. There's an awesome book called Playing Big, which is pretty women focused, but I think it applies. There's some really great things in it, which my coach actually gave to me. This whole thing about, thinking about what kind of person do you want to be? And then actually questioning, okay, well, what would that person have for breakfast? Well, actually, she really thinks X, Y, and Z important. Okay, I'm not going to have toast. I'm going to have a protein shaker or whatever it may be. And you start making these incremental changes because you're more likely to get the goal of that kind of person. Or there's a really lovely concept of using your future self as a mentor for your current self. So rather than, it's wonderful if you work with amazing people that you can model their behavior and you think, okay, what would person X do in this situation? I had an amazing female boss a couple of years ago, and I would often think to myself, what would Olivia do? Well, in this circumstance, what would Olivia do? Because she was really pragmatic and she had always had great ideas but was very kind and considerate and giving and all these kind of wonderful things. But if you don't have access to those mentors, thinking about, okay, well, I'd like in 10 years' time to be in this position doing these things. Okay, well, what would that person do in this scenario? Okay, well, they might do X. All right, well, let's try it. Because everything should begin, in the same way it's experimentation. Try it. If it doesn't work, if you try it on and it doesn't fit, well, find something else. Evolve it, change it. But at least you've done something different than your known go-to, which doesn't work for you. There's a lot to be said by just stepping back. And you don't, and the other point was that instant reaction. You don't need to have it. You can write the email, which is a response, and then turn the computer off. If you feel the same way, then do it. I had a coaching session the other day and I was talking to somebody and it's write the 6 different versions of the email where you're angry, you're overly empathetic, you're this, you're very polite. Don't send them all. But again, it's getting it out of your brain so you don't have those ruminating thoughts. There's lots of different ways of going about something, but you don't. And I had a coach I had a decade ago used to say to me, you don't need to snap into that thing. It's feel the thing, process it, then act, rather than just act or feel it. Sorry, stress level would hit, I'd react, and then I'd consider it, and then I'd be like, oh God, what have I done there? Or that didn't feel good, etc. Get the data and work out how you want to respond. You can always buy time, even if it's in your meeting or something. Just leave that with me. I'll come back to you on that. That's a really interesting point. I just want to have a thought about that. take a breath. You're allowed to do that. It's not a problem.
Yeah. I've got some of those emails still. And every now and again, I kind of look at that, like, just at that moment of, oh my goodness, I really was going to send that.
Yeah.
And, you know, with a lot of time now, it's quite a cathartic process to go through. But have you ever seen the Matthew McConaughey story? I think it was like an inauguration speech or something like that. And he talks about, it's so good. If we can magically kind of make this appear, we'll make it appear. If not, I'll talk it through with you. If that's okay. But I'm not going to do the Matthew McConaughey voice.
Come do the voice.
All right. So he says, whoever comes up to him and he says, I want to be me in 10 years time. 10 years goes and the guy comes back and he says, so did you succeed? Did you get to where you wanted to go? Or did you not get there? And he's like, nah, man, I'm not even close. I got another 10 years to get to that person. And the point being that even if you aspire to be the person that you want to become, try and figure out who you want to become, but don't even ever get there. It's all about thinking to the next person, always keeping that dream person that you're after a little bit further away than where you can grab. And once you get to a point where things are getting better, what's the next version of yourself that you want to get to? Yep. I'm definitely going to find the video and put it here.
Yep.
Rather than me talking it through, because he does it so well.
This is another thing. So my coach, I did a lot of work last year as, someone starting something new. And I was like, as a coach, I should get a coach. It was very much, she was like all about celebration and reflection. And I have an evidence board. You will never see it, but there's a board up there. And it's like, you've done these things. So ahead of a phone call, I might have a wobble when I'm talking to, I don't know, someone, running an incubator or VC person. I'm like, I'm like, hold up, I've done all those things. Yes, I am capable. Well done. Right, here we go. And celebrating the wins, like when you do get the goal, because she always used to talk about this exponential, like you're just constantly looking up and you never look down the mountain. You never think where I've come to. It's always like the next goal, the next goal, the next goal. And it feels exhausting. Whereas at some point you've got to have a reflection on like, oh, do you know what? Actually, and this is where journaling comes in massively. And I used to record all my coaching calls because I'll look back at them every so often and be like, actually, 6 months ago I was in this place and now I'm here. And that's a massive, massive difference. So having this awareness of the path you've been on as well as the path you're going on, I think is, really, really important. Yeah.
One of the things that I did, I can tell you pretty much the exact date. One of the things I did in, what are we now,
23.
I said I can tell you the exact date. January, February 2018.
Okay.
2018, I started on a process of basically redesigning my life. Ooh. So there's a great book called Design Your Life, and there's also a new book called Design Your Work Life, or a newer book called Design Your Work Life, which are both really good. Got a load of tools, loads of exercises that you can do to kind of really understand yourself. And I did a lot of those things. One of the things that I really remember was throughout a day, give yourself a little mark out of 10 through as an experiment on your energy levels.
Yes.
So you can do it for your energy levels, and you can do it for, for your happiness, or like how much you're smiling or whatever else. And doing that made me realize how much, at the time I was in a leadership team of a startup, it made me realize how much my energy was just sapped at the end of those leadership meetings. And I thought that like this was a place I wanted to be. I wanted to be at the boardroom table, so to speak. And it was only during that I realized that there's a reality of an assumption of a place that you want to be. And when you realize it's very hard to realize what that reality is without doing an exercise like that. But it's just this massive drop, and it carried on throughout the rest of the day, regardless of what that meeting was. It carried on until something else happened. Mm-hmm. And what actually, I was really lucky that on our weekly board meetings or leadership meetings, they also did twice weekly yoga. So I did yoga every day after that. So I was on this real dip. I did this yoga and it just soared. My energy soared again after that, and I felt so much better because taking an hour out with an in-house yoga instructor was just amazing. And actually, that process of kind of understanding these things led me to probably about a year and a half of experimenting with different ways of doing it. I created a personal manifesto. Nice. And some of these things were just ridiculous. Like, well, I say ridiculous, but like seemingly really small. I wanted to do more exercise, so I was commuting into London and doing a lot of like visits to different offices and whatever else. And one of the points on my manifesto was, if I can walk it in half an hour, I walk. Perfect. So instead of jumping on the tube or whatever else, I'd walk it if I could get there in half an hour. One of the other ones was, if I can see the top of the stairs, I take the stairs, not the elevator or the escalator. And it's just like little things, but these became now, beyond that experimentation, these are still things that I do. Right? I still will walk if it's less than half an hour. I'll still walk up the stairs if I can. Little things just to kind of get the heart rate going a little bit and whatever else. One of the things that was really important to me was seeing more of my family. And so I had this rule, which was every Friday night I'm at home for dinner. And like, this was at the time I was having lots of late nights with work and with like kind of work socializing where you're kind of selling, but you're drinking and whatever else. Every Friday, regardless of what was happening, I was at home eating dinner with my kids. Nice. And that got to the point where we had a leadership offsite. There was a weekend thing, and the whole team delayed it by a day so that I could have dinner with my kids on the Friday. Amazing. And like, because it was a manifesto, rather than just like, oh, I generally do these things, it was like, this is my personal manifesto. No one ever questioned anything on it. So I was like, no, I'm sorry, like, it's my personal manifesto, I can't do that. And
did you like print out a copy and give it to him? They're probably like, he's a bit of a weirdo, he's given me this printed laminated document.
This is the thing, like, no one ever saw it, but it was something that I repeated and I talked about. And therefore, you know, weekdays I don't eat before midday, and this was like part of the intermittent fasting kind of experiment that I did. You know, I was doing a lot of other kind of things, but those experiments, and the reason, like, the background behind this, right? Maybe it's helpful, but links to other elements of depression and challenge that we have in our lives. The reason for that is that my dad died when he was 66, like 2 years before I started, and I just kind of got over initial stages of grief and was like, he was 66, I don't want to die at 66. And the moment, the memory that I have most prominently about my dad really was when he was 40. Okay. And I was a year and a half away from being 40. So I was like, I want to experiment a load so I can get these habits formed by the time I'm 40. Nice. And then just like, that would be a perfect thing for me. So that was the reason why I kind of went on this voyage of discovery and experimentation. In the same way, like, I talk about prototyping a lot, right? And I talk about being able to prototype anything. And I genuinely think we can prototype our lives by experimenting with little things and then building up the experiments to kind of figure out who we are, you know, using design thinking, empathizing with yourself, like understanding properly, deeply who you are. Yeah. Sometimes you can only do that through experimentation as well.
No, that's amazing. And I think there's a few things in that. So making a decision once and sticking to it, if you decide it's the right thing, lessens a cognitive load because you have that.
Compound decisions as well.
Yeah.
So decisions that mean you don't have to make a decision for other things.
Yes.
That wildly
decision fatigue, don't you? You get to the point you're like, I do. I'll come, like, some days I'll walk into the kitchen at tea time and Simon will be like, what do you want for tea? And I'm like, something. And he's just like, I have no brain power left. I bumped into a neighbour yesterday when I was walking the dogs in between meetings. And he's like, Beck? And I was like, oh, hi. And he's like, you all right then? I was like, no, because I'm like processing. Like, I had so many different meetings about different topics yesterday. I'm surprised I didn't get hit by a bus. Like, it was just ridiculous. And by the time like tea time came around, that's another reason I was just like, pizza, wine, like, go to. I didn't even think about it. And another thing you were saying as well, going back to the piece about your energy levels, again, this is something my coach had me do. Write a list of things that you find de-energizing and then things that you find energizing. Mm-hmm. So de-energizing, for example, like heavy spreadsheet work, I don't like. There's other things I really don't like.
I love a spreadsheet. I love a spreadsheet.
But, you know, what do? I couple that with really sweary hip hop music. It works a charm. I find that energizing. Believe it or not, before really, really important phone calls, I dance around to a song from the Rocky IV soundtrack.
Of course you do.
Yeah,
Of
and
course you do.
it's my go-to because it makes me incredibly happy, and it won't be the one that everyone thinks it is. You know, like to the point where we were when we did that hackathon last year, and Sean was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I got the whole team like dancing around to Rocky IV," and they're like, "What are you doing?" It's like it releases the energy, it makes you feel energized. So you can use these things to either get energized quickly if you want to be in a certain state. You know, Amy Cuddy talks about the Superman stance. So if you stand like Superman for X amount of, I think it's like 2 minutes, it increases your lowers your cortisol, increases your testosterone, I think it is. So you're more likely to be calm, relaxed, etc. Knowing these things about you can be used to your advantage. So if you're going to have to do something that's de-energizing, you couple it with something energizing, or do something energizing straight afterwards and kind of like get on balance. You know, make things fun and interesting if you can. If it's a case of, you know, you hate doing the books at the end of the month, well, go to your favorite coffee shop, treat yourself, make it far more fun, engaging, etc. Because it's like running businesses is hard. So anything you can do to try and make it a little bit easier on yourself.
And linked to that, I think knowing what time of day you work best for different tasks as well. Like I'm so much better creatively in the morning, so I tend to try to schedule a lot of calls in the afternoon. Calls that are like not like strategy level hard thinking calls, but I'll do workshops in the morning as much as possible, because that's when I really need those kind of creative juices flowing. I need the energy. I'm much better in the morning. A lot of people get that kind of afternoon after lunch kind of lull. I tend to try to go for a walk in the afternoon just to kind of get that refresh, and then try to get into some blocks of work as well. So it's like understanding what time of day you do your best work, but also how do you chunk up your day. I can do like a 3 hour straight in the morning without really looking up. If I'm in the flow, and I know that like a lot of the people would say, you know, Pomodoro technique, get out every half an hour, whatever it is. But actually, if I'm in the flow, I just want to carry on. I want to build up that flow state.
I'm the same.
But in the afternoon, I can't. I find it much more difficult to get into a kind of a flow state. And so I chunk up my time into half-hour blocks, you know, do something intently. And like, I'm the kind of person, and I know this about myself now, it's one of those things that I've fought against so much. But actually now I'm looking at it as a strength, which is a great quote. I'm going to find the quote. If you give me like a minute and I will edit this out. It's going to be really disappointing now when you hear this quote. Okay, got it. I couldn't say who it's by. Cy Twombly.
Oh.
So I've got this quote from. I'm going to get this name wrong, because I think it looks Welsh. Cy Twombly. CY.
Yep.
Abstract expressionist artist. And the quote is, when I work very fast, but preparing to work can take any length of time. Yeah. And so I think when you kind of realize that, like, I am fucking quick. I'm so quick when I get into it and when I know exactly what I'm doing. And I need that time to kind of mentally process all the things, all the different building blocks. I need that mental gymnastics and mental Tetris game, which a lot of people think of as procrastination, or they think of as not working or not thinking, or just like ignoring the work that you need to do. But I need that time, and it can take literally any length of time as well. Yeah. But I need that time to kind of get me into the mode to go like, bam, I'm doing it, whacking, you know, getting on it. And like this happens a lot with video creation. I nearly said whacking it out, and that
is happening.
And this happens a lot with the video creation stuff that I do.
Okay.
Like, it takes me a really long time to think about these videos.
Yeah.
And so now what I'm doing is I'm going through, okay, if I know I'm going to be in this mode of preparing, I'm going to kind of be procrastinating, but rather than doing that for one video, I'm going to layer them up. So nice. At the moment, I'm thinking of like 5 or 6 different videos, and kind of putting all the building blocks together. and then when I'm ready, like it flows, and I've just written a script and done the planning for a video that I might be hopefully going to shoot later on. But that's taken 3 weeks to think about.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's fine. But I think it's
okay.
like, there's a few things in this, like chunking activities. So that's like a massive productivity thing. I'm doing using Motion at the moment, which, because I know there's loads going on, and I've kind of like just set it with deadlines and priorities and all those kind of things. And it shifts everything by AI. And I'm like, ooh. So I just have to do the thing that I've said I'm going to do when I turn up. There's no thought about it. And it's just like, oh, revolutionary. Past me is planned for future me. I love that. Yet knowing when you work well, what your process is. I mean, a really woo thing is human design, which I was talking to my other half about last week. And he was just like, that sounds a bit too, like, what do you do, hold crystals and like dance in the moonlight while you're doing it? And it is all based on like birth dates and, you know, where you were born, etc. But even these more woo activities that kind of sit, you know, in positive psychology, I mean, that's not a positive psychology thing, but kind of out there, and some people use them as tools and techniques. Anything that tells you about yourself and how you react to that. So essentially, it's, you know, so I'm supposedly a projector, and I work in a very certain way, and I need, you know, according to it, I need permission to do this, and I need da 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 da. But actually, I was like, how do I feel about those things? How do I, in the same way with personality tests, how do I feel about things? Does that thing come out? Well, actually, that comes out in me in stressful scenarios, or actually, that's how I do work well. Maybe if I structure my day around these principles, let's see what happens. And actually, it's been pretty good so far, which is, you know, a bit, it may be people seem a bit bonkers. You know, people don't like horoscopes, for example, and star signs, but I'm a Gemini. I know that I have these two very different sides to me. I like practicality, logic, etc. But then I do like things that are a bit more woo. So I try and embrace the two of them at the same time and just make them work for me. There's, you know, I like planning a lot. I mean, I'm the person who writes. I mean, I say I hate spreadsheets. This is how much I love planning, though. You know, I make detailed, and we're talking detailed lists about what we're doing on holiday, to the point where, like, if we go from A to B, we could stop here for lunch and see these things, but we've only got X amount of time. And Simon's like, "Oh, joy, I'm going on holiday with you again." But then people
I feel for him.
no, but I'm
really
also really spontaneous.
Simon, I'm so sorry.
You're just like, great, another holiday, Beck, can't wait. But then other times I'm like massively spontaneous, and there's these two, and that's fine, because it's like I recognize those things in myself. I manage those things. It's fine, you know, understanding whether you're a night owl. You know, I am a human version of a plant. I need daylight. I couldn't work in whatever nightclub you're in. You know what I mean? I'm like the biggest like window. I'm always drinking. I'm normally slurping something because I need to be hydrated. It's just the way you are. And I was like, as long as you know what works for you, it'll serve you well. And help you, smash out those bad habits.
But also, we are, as humans, just like one massive paradox, right, of ourselves. We change, we can, as you say, be very analytical and very creative. We can be extremes as well. And I think the more you understand and embrace that, and understand, you know, which Bex is here today, which version of us are we working on, what work do we want to do that is kind of tapping into that part? Yeah. I think that it's just that constant voyage of discovery and changing things. Everything, you know, things morph and change and whatever else. I think that's a truism, but it's also something which most people don't necessarily think about, I don't think.
Yeah. And if you look at leadership, you know, if you do get to the point where you have a team, you know, a lot of people are thrust into management and leadership and don't expect to be. It's authenticity that people want, you know, and it's not a case of like, if you're not a manager and never have run a team, or you've not been a leader and been like, okay, well, this is what a classic view of leadership looks like, I must become that. It's not, it's about you being you. and being able for people to look to you for information, them to respect your decision making, but you still can be open, vulnerable. We spoke about it last week in terms of, the more you can create that psychological safety within your team, and people can be vulnerable. Simon does one-word check-in sometimes in his team meetings if he needs to, and it's a case like, how's everyone feeling right now? Like one word going around the table, just so we can see the temperature of the team and if anyone needs any help or all those kind of things. It's really, really key. So yeah, like know your strengths and learn them, and you can be. I'm a total mixed bag of frogs. I was going to say that doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. Like, there's all sorts of things. I'm like Barbie. There's a different Bex for any occasion, and that's fine. Like, I'm down with that. But and there's still a lot of growth there, and there's a lot of things to learn, and I know where my faults lie, and I'm not harsh on myself on them. I'm just like, okay, like what can I do to tweak and evolve them?
Yeah. And one of the things that you said a minute ago, which I wanted to, again, just like double down on even more, is I don't think it matters what you do as long as you do something, right? So some of these things might seem woo-y to some people, but actually, if it helps, if it works, if it's driving the future you that you want, if it's enabling you to reflect, then great. If it's meditation, if it's yoga, if it's going for a walk, if it's one of the best things for battling stress, I think, my newfound...
He's coming on screen.
It's something like this.
This
is something that works.
Yeah.
This is Stanley. Hey, Stanley. Tired Stanley.
Oh, bless him.
And like, just knowing that I'm going to be someone that's keeping me company, but I can look down and smile, instantly smile, right?
Exactly.
So knowing those kinds of things, whatever works, it doesn't matter what it is.
You finally got yourself that therapy support
You're
dog
going to stay here
that
now,
you
aren't you,
needed.
buddy? He's going to stay here with me.
I'd do it. It's just when they get a bit older and squeaky, that's when you just need to like jib them. Just get shot.
Just get shot. Just
Well,
keep a new,
just
new
lock
fresh
them in
one
another
coming
room, like temporarily. But this thing that it's you don't have to play by the rules. There are no rules. Again, my coach used to call them bullshit rules. Like she'd say, I'd say, oh, well, I've got to do this. And she'd be like, why? And I'm like,
oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And it's, and I employed her to be confrontational with me, like to push me and be like, why do you think that thing? And I'd be like, because every other organization I've ever worked in does that. And she's like, and I was like, now I work in my own company and do what I like. It just, that's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of like whatever works for you. That's obviously socially and morally acceptable. Huge caveat there. But that's the thing. It's, if you're going to start startups, you're going to be in it for a long haul if it goes well, and it's going to be hard. So have those practices. People are like, oh, meditation. But actually, if you can quieten your mind, that lessens the anxiety. So there's less rumination, there's less going on. So you're not like as mentally exhausted. I've got onto a thing called Yoga Nidra, which is non-sleep deep rest meditations, which has been proven to be more effective than normal meditations. There's an amazing woman, Ali Boothroyd, on YouTube. I was listening to that 2 in the morning, just to go to, because it's, but it's my go-to now. And the more you can put these practices in place as well. So I used to be very much a case of, I'll just do it when the shit hits the fan. Like when I need to break in case of alarm type thing, I'll do that thing. That's too late. The horse is bolted. The more you can put these practices in, there's an amazing book right here. Like that talks about different things you can do during burnout.
I couldn't quite see it. Maybe it's just me.
Sorry. That better?
There we go. Burnout.
There we go. It's quite female focused, but it is a great book, and it talks about the different things you can do. So positive interactions, for example, like physical intimacy. So whether that's a hug or a kiss, exercise. Exercise is one of the best things for it, because essentially it's anything you can do to break the state in terms of anxiety that makes you realize your body knows you're safe. So whereas previously, a woolly mammoth would be chasing you, you get back to the cave, you'd high five all your mates and be like, boss, I'm safe. Now it's like, all right, I finished work. That that danger hasn't gone away. It's still just in my head. So anything you can do to kind of process, and the more your brain, I was rereading this morning actually, and it was saying there's a rat study with 2 different rats, one of which got shocked, but then was shown an escape route. So there was a door opened and the rat went out of it. It knew that if it was getting shocked or something bad happened, there was an escape. It was going to be okay. It was a short-term thing. It was fine. There's another mouse or rat that was put in water and there was no dry land. So it was constantly paddling, just constantly paddling a little bit more. And eventually it gave up hope. And when you give up hope because you realize that there's no way of getting out of the bad cycle, it just starts floating. And even when you take that rat out of the water and shock it, it just, oh, fine, I'll let it happen to me. And it's, wow. Because you break someone's spirit. And that's the thing, the more you realize, when these things do affect you, how they affect you, what you can do about them, and you gain back a bit of kind of like power and control, it makes a massive difference. That's the reason why people don't leave jobs that they hate. They're just accepting of shit things. They don't go, right, I can evolve, I can change, I can do differently. It is that little that little rat that's just been broken, unfortunately. So yeah,
don't be a broken rat. That's the moral of this video.
Nothing else. Don't be a broken rat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lots to unpick, lots to figure. And this is a constant journey as well, as I kind of said a few times. I've gone through periods in my life where I've been doing daily meditations or daily yoga, where I've been really great with diet and exercise and everything else. It's a period now where I'm not doing some of these things quite as well. But one of the big reflections is that actually a lot of the things that we do aren't necessarily about the thing that we think it's about. So that's a cryptic way of saying this. I'll give you an example. Exercise I've always thought of is about getting more physically healthy. Yeah. But actually, the biggest benefit that I've probably ever had about exercise is getting mentally healthy, far more mentally healthy. And actually, there's the theory now, or the prevailing kind of science, is saying that exercise actually doesn't enable you to lose weight. It's what you eat that enables you to lose weight. And particularly the science about gut bacteria and the second brain.
Yes.
And actually, maybe this is something as well, thinking about your pizza and wine evening, actually getting good kind of functionality, good working of the gut is so much more important than we used to think. And so that's the way, much more think about what you put inside you rather than exercising is a much better way to diet, to lose weight.
Were you more inclined, if you've slept badly, and you often sleep badly due to red wine, as much as you might conk out initially, the quality of sleep isn't there. So you won't have had the REM sleep, which is cleared the stress bucket, etc. So you wake up feeling groggy, whatever. Thankfully, I only had like 2 glasses of red wine rather than 2 bottles last night. Learning. But you're more inclined to eat crap the next day. And like Brené Brown says, in times of stress, don't turn to the Buddy the Elf diet, which is 4 types of sugar, like candy canes, syrup, candy, and whatever else it is. And most people, it's like, I need the energy, I need a quick fix, so I'm going to go to the carbs, I'm going to do this. It doesn't work well for you. No. Your energy levels will be sapped. It affects serotonin levels. It's all kind of issues. So there's a lot going on. So the better you can get into those practices.
Yeah, and those compound decisions.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I decided to do was exercise every morning at 6 a.m. And actually, this is where the Spen and Nick show first started.
Yes.
Because Nick and I used to train in the morning. We got together on Zoom at 5:30.
I still find it weird that you just used to watch each other work out. But
it was a bit
like,
close
hey, bro,
to the mark
that bench
every now and
press is
again.
going really well. Like,
Nick's got these particularly high cut shorts, and that wasn't a pretty sight at 6 o'clock.
Drop another 5K for me.
But what that did, to bring it back, because it was early in the morning, way earlier than I would normally get up, it meant I had to go to bed by 10, which meant I had to finish eating by 6 or 7 at the latest and not eat any more snacks. And so it has all of these knock-on effects just by saying, I'm going to be on that Zoom call at 6 a.m. or 5:45. Everything else has to be put into place in order to make that one thing work. And because I did that, it meant that the rest of the morning was really well lined up and everything was kind of as I wanted it to be. So yeah, one decision that pulls a lot of other things together. And it wasn't like, am I going to wake up in the morning? The decision's already made.
Yeah.
And I have to wake up. I just got up and got going.
It's that whole thing about being outwardly accountable as well. I need to be outwardly accountable. I'm rubbish. If I say to myself, I'm going to do X, it doesn't happen. If I say to someone else, I'm going to do that, I'll walk over hot coals to make it happen. I used to row deliberately because if I didn't turn up, 7 other people couldn't go on that boat.
Yeah.
It was the only way to get me to exercise, because there's more than a handful of times I've been in some kind of keep fit class and literally the instructor's been like, right, do so-and-so, and literally turned and I've just gone, bye, and just like to whoever mate I'm in and just ran, and they're like, what has she got? Because I'm just like, no, not doing it, not even pretending, just getting the hell out of there. Like, and so I know that about me. It's all about knowing yourself, reflection, etc. It does make a massive, massive difference.
There we go. So, should we wrap up here?
Yes, I think so. Nice place to do that.
I would love to hear of any other thoughts from anyone else. So, if you've got something that's working for you particularly well, that you'd love to share, that maybe we can then share further, to make sure that, giving anyone any of these pointers and guidance and thoughts, just ways of doing things, ways of looking and thinking about things, let us know in the comments. It'll be really good to see what you do to kind of, for your maybe your personal operating system, or maybe it's a bit more simplified than that, and it's just like things that you regularly do that help with your day-to-day routines. Would love to hear that. Also, even more than that, if there's anything that you've heard that you've gone, oh, that might be interesting, try it out, experiment, prototype it. And we don't mean like you've got to write things down. Just have a go at something and see whether it works and see the change that it can start to make. Do it more than once. Don't go, oh, that didn't work. I didn't go to bed. I went to bed at 10 o'clock last night and and I'm still tired this morning. Like, I
didn't magically wake up fit. Like, what happened? And try and address one thing at a time, because I'm a bugger. Yeah. I'll be like, right, I'm going to attack every area of my life. Go. Yeah. And I wonder why I fail.
And a small thing as well.
Small things, yeah.
Small thing. If you want to start journaling, write one sentence, one word even. Just set yourself a little goal maybe of one thing, one word. And that's journaling daily, right?
Yeah. Celebrate the win as well. Celebrate the fact that you've done it. Like, give yourself a pat on the back. Whatever it is, I will randomly buy myself things. If I land a new client or I land a project or something, I go and buy myself, I've got a really lovely pair of like rainbow sneakers upstairs, and everywhere and I'm like, I'm proud of myself because I did X, Y, and Z, things like that, because your brain is hardwired to remember bad shit to keep you safe, unfortunately. So you need to do something that makes it remember, actually, things are going to be okay. Things will be fine.
Love it.
Awesome.
That's it for now.
Yes.
That is it for now. And we're going to do this again next week.
We are,
because we're accountable.
Yes.
We've now set this decision. We're going to do this every week. And there you go.
I just want to see more Stan. I'm not particularly bothered about hanging out with you anymore. When's Stan and Beck's show coming on?
Fuck you.
And on that note...
See you later.